So, Emmett, in conclusion, can you give us a little idea on how you feel about Veterans Day celebrating and this new generation of veterans coming up?
Yeah, I've given some thought to this years and years ago, right towards the end, probably the end of the Vietnam War. I was in a grocery store and I knew this one veteran, one individual, was a veteran of the Vietnam War because he has a prosthetic hand. And somebody else walked up and said, "Welcome home." And the response from the soldier was very favorable. Like, they were both Vietnam veterans, and I wanted to ask them about this phrase, "welcome home." And I forget, because there was a little bit of sarcasm, and I thought. And then years later, I was at my granddaughter's, I think, 3rd birthday. That was about 30 years ago. There was another Vietnam veteran who had a prosthetic leg, and I knew he was a Vietnam veteran because he had a hat that said Vietnam something. And some other veteran walked up and said, "Welcome home," and the guy responded with another phrase I didn't catch. Well, I was curious about this "welcome home," and when I got a chance, I sat down with them, and I just queried them about what was this "welcome home," and they said, "Well, nobody else welcomed us home, so we're welcoming each other home." And then I got to thinking about that, about the time that Tom Brokaw's book came out about the greatest generation. Now, the book is written for those of us that grew up in the Depression and went through World War II. We may have been a great generation, but not the greatest, because you got to stop and think the revolutionary military that gave us this country was probably one of the greatest. The War of 1812, the Civil War, where the North and South each fought for a cause. They were a pretty greatest nation. They were fighting for their cause. And the Spanish-American War and World War I, World War II were great generations. Korea was a great generation. The Persian Gulf Wars, that was stressful. They were great generations. The one I didn't mention in this dialogue was the Vietnam War. Now, if there was the greatest military, the greatest generation, it was the Vietnam military. Not only did they have to fight the Viet Cong and North Vietnam, they had to fight friends during the day and enemies at night. They fought an enemy that came out of sanctuaries we couldn't get into. You had members of Congress who came out with negative responses that gave psychological help to the enemy. You had universities, the administrators, the faculty, and some students, through their actions and signs and speeches, gave some psychological help to the enemy. You had churches who donated money to causes where the money wound up going to North Vietnam. You had movie stars. I hate to use the word stars because that shows some respect. They were just actors and actresses that came out with not too positive remarks. Even their actions gave some psychological help to the enemy. You also had those street people out there that walk, they talk, and they're almost human. Their actions, their demonstrations, their burning of the flag, and then you veterans in your uniforms were insulted. You were individually insulted, the uniform insulted, the flag was insulted. And if there is the greatest generation, it is the Vietnam veterans. And Tom Brokaw should have written a book called The Greatest Generation, Vietnam. And at this point, all I can say is thank you for your service and welcome home.